Welcome to Papa's Workshop. I decided to add a little control box to my new CNC machine, and this is it. This has my off and on to be able to turn my controller on and off, plus I have these three buttons along with this to be able to plug in my probe. That way I can use my 3-axis touch plate, and I can use the Z probe also, whichever one that I prefer, by plugging it in here. Now this is a luxury, but it's certainly a nice to have luxury. So let me show you how I made it today. So let's get started. I started out this project like I do with many others, looking through the scrap bin, trying to find wood that is going to be the sufficient size to be able to create the parts that I need. In this case, what I'm looking at is cutting out the front and the back faces of this control box, and I want to be able to have it 6 inches long, 5 inches wide, and I found a piece of 1/8 inch plywood that's going to be able to do this for me. So I set up the table saw and went ahead and cut those two parts. So this is going to be the main two components to be able to make this whole box work, because I want to have the buttons and the off and on switch on one side and the place for the probe, and on the other side I want to have the AC power that will control the turning on and off of my router and to the controller. As far as plans for this project, I do like I do so many of my other projects. I have a little sketch that I use, and the ideas that I want to be able to accomplish, I will jot down onto a piece of paper. And this one was really no different, so there's no formal plans. As far as the plans for this is my total drawing that I had sketched out. Nothing fancy, but it gives me a little something to work with. So I now have the front and I have the back plate done. Now as far as the sides, I'm going to go ahead, these are going to be 4 inches. I'm going to go ahead and cut these out of the 1/2 inch MDF. And design the control panel that I want to be able to make. And I have the red line that's not going to engrave. And that's basically the size of the work material, the 1/8 inch plywood. I have the black lines in there. I want those very, very light, because that's going to be the cutout for the actual switches and the buttons. And then the blue, that's the part that I want to be able to engrave, and that's going to fill. So if you look over here, you'll see that the black is a line only, and that's going to be very, very tiny. You're going to hardly see it because it's going to be very thin. The blue is going to be the fill for all the words, and the red is going to be just as a guideline, and it's not going to output, it's not going to engrave. So I have this set up now the way that I want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and mark the center, because a little green dot right there is the center point. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up now on the laser and get it engraving. You really don't need anything fancy to be able to mark this, as long as it's a straight edge. So there's my center point. So I'm going to go ahead and line the laser up now, and we're going to get started. Just going to set that right there. We'll bring the laser over to it. I have the laser now set exactly where it needs to be over the center point. And I've also used my gauge to check the height. So we are all set. And we'll go ahead and start the engraving process. The next thing I'm going to do, this is going to be the back of the panel. And I'm going to cut out this rectangle, and that's going to be able to receive this outlet. Now granted, this is a 20 amp outlet, and that's okay. I'm only going to be running a total of the 15 amp service to it. Later on, when I have one, I'll probably swap this out, but for now, this will be just fine. Okay, now this was the first plate that I had done, and you can see right here where this got bumped. The laser actually bumped into the bump stop itself and it moved it over. So these words are supposed to be centered, and as a result of it bumping, it turned a little bit onto the router base, and now it shifted everything to the right. So when it engraved these, it was shifted over, looks like a good 1/4 inch. So this one is not usable, so this one goes in the trash can. This one I just slid it over to the right, taped it down so it wouldn't move when I got it all nice and square, and eliminated the bump stop. Now this particular piece of plywood is actually engraving darker than the other one did. And this gives you the idea and the evidence that shows that different wood will engrave differently. Yeah, I took this over to the scroll saw and just cut this out, and then this will be able to slide. That outlet will go right in there. Now I found a couple of screws that I'm going to use to be able to secure this receptacle into the into this base. Now over in my scrap area, I actually have a piece of 1/2 inch plywood that's 4 inches wide. I'm going to go ahead and use this to be able to make the box. Now the black lines that were engraved onto the plywood make the perfect reference to be able to drill the holes and make the cutouts for the various switches and the buttons for this. Now what I wanted to be able to do is just drill like halfway through, and that's not much on an 1/8 inch piece of plywood. Then I just flipped it over and go ahead and drill the other side, and that piece just pops out, and that virtually eliminates any tear out that I would have. As far as cutting out the rectangle hole for the switch, it's actually really easy to do with a utility knife. This plywood is so thin, all I really needed to do is score this and then cut it on the back side, and from there it was able to pop out very, very easily. I think it was easier than to do it this way than a scroll saw or any other method. Then I just wanted to test the fit for the switch, and yep, that's going to work perfect. Now it's time to go ahead and set up for the RCA connector, and a couple of quick measurements, get the size of my drill bits that I need, and I'm going to drill 2 holes to be able to accept this RCA connector. Now I took this over to the bandsaw and notched this down just a little bit as compared to the other side. And what that's going to allow me to do is slip this in and have it come right out through to the surface. That will be perfect. Now I'm going to hot glue this in. I don't know how well the hot glue will hold over time, but I'm going to start with that. Now I can go ahead and slip this switch in. Now this is a snug fit, but that's actually what I want. That fits in there perfectly. Now I'm going to go ahead and start setting these up and putting these in. And they'll just screw on to the back. There we go. It's going to be nice. Now that's what it's going to look like so far. Let me check the glue, see how that's doing over here. Okay, the hot glue gun is hot enough now, so I'm just going to go ahead and run a bead of the hot glue around its connector, and that should hold it in place. Hopefully this hot glue will hold it in place, because periodically, of course, I'll be using this to unplug on a constant basis, and this will, of course, will be plugged in all the time. The next step is just to connect all the wires to these various buttons and to the switch. Now this wire is just leftover wire that I had from other projects, and you'll notice that this is what I had used on another project. So for simplicity's sake, I just kept the wiring color the same, the black and green and the red and the white. And that's going to make it easy when it comes time to hook up the other end of the wire over on the controller. There we go. I'll do the same thing for this one. I'm going to go ahead and bend these wires and have them run in this direction. I'm going to have them come out the side of the box. The next thing I want to do is go ahead and put the receptacle in place and screw it in position on the back of this panel. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and connect up the wiring for this portion and attach the switch and the power supply to be able to control this outlet. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and put the cover on, because I really don't need access to this side of the outlet any longer. All I'm going to do is flip it over and it'll be time to attach the wires to the back. But before attaching all the wires, I need an actual box. So I went ahead and cut my 4-inch wide piece of plywood to the proper length, and using the glue and some brad staples, I went ahead and put this together. Now this only took just a couple minutes to do, and this is a technique that I've used before in making the little small boxes. This is an easy, simple method with the rabbet joints. The glue and the brad staples work amazingly well. So once that is all finished, yes, I did sand it a little bit, filled the holes, and I took it outside and spray painted the box. But I wanted to be able to get a quick test, and the size of this worked out absolutely perfect. So it's time to go spray paint this, and then we can finish up the wiring while the paint's drying. To do the wiring for this, I used an extension cord, and I cut about an 8-foot section, which I think will be plenty long, and I'm going to bring that into the box and connect the ends. So I have my ground wire, which is the green, black is going to supply the power, and of course the white is going to be the neutral. Now here's a quick look at the wiring of the 3 buttons, and you can also see where I've hot glued in the RCA cable. Now everything is connected, and the one thing that's important as far as these buttons, the polarity doesn't really matter. Now I used a piece of heat shrink material to kind of keep those wires organized and grouped together. As far as this switch, I have the white, which is the neutral, connected, and the black one, the middle one, is already connected, and it will be running to the outlet. The 3rd wire is the input for the power, and that will be connected to that bottom last remaining prong. When all 3 wires are connected, then I'll go ahead and heat shrink all 3 wires at the same time. At this point, I'm ready to bring power into the box. So I'm taking my orange cord and running that into the hole that I drilled into the side of the box, and that way I'll be able to have access and connect the final wire. Now you'll notice that I took another black piece of the wire and soldered it onto that 3rd terminal on that switch. This is going to make it a lot easier to be able to attach the black wire that's my input for the power. All I really need to do is just use a wire nut to be able to make that connection. Doing it this way is a whole lot easier than trying to solder that wire to that switch. Also, if I ever need to change this wire, then it's just easy to unscrew the wire nut and disconnect the wires from the outlet, and I can replace it. So this is a far easier way to be able to do it. And we've got the green for the ground. I'm going to go ahead and put the ground on here. Now the green wire, which is the ground, is going to attach to the green screw on the outlet. Now what I'm doing is just bending the wire and making a little small hook. And then I'm going to just slip that right over the screw. Put that wire where it comes in on the left side of the screw. It wraps around the screw itself. And then as you tighten the screw down, it actually pulls the wire into that screw and makes a better connection. Next, I want to connect the power coming from the switch. Now this is the black wire, and it connects to the gold screw. Now it's a little bit hard to be able to get the angle right so that you can see that, but I slipped the wire into the slot that's actually made to be able to receive this, and then by tightening the screw, it clamps down on the wire and gives you the good connection. To connect the common wires, which is the white, there's actually two of them. I have one wire that is coming from the switch itself, and I have the second one from the power cord. Now, because those just need to join together, there's really no need to be able to use wire nuts or anything. I have the two screws on the outlet, and those are silver, by the way, and those two wires can just slip into the screw, tighten down, and that will solve that problem and complete that portion of the wiring. Now I'll just plug in the two RCA cables and the wiring will be complete. And we'll screw this into place. Want to put a tie on here so it'll keep it from pulling out. And I want to show this. This is now where power coming in to this switch. The middle one is the power going to my plug, and the white one is the common wire. And that's wired according to the instructions from this plug. And then we have all three of these that are wired, and I know which ones are which, so when I put them into the controller, I know my green and my black is the pause, and the red and the white are going to be the resume, and then my separate wire is going to be for the abort. And I have these plugged in for the probe. So all I need to do now is just go ahead and screw this in. And this will be done. Most important thing is to have some screws in here that will hold everything together. And we'll do the same thing on the back side. There we go. It's all set. And we got the plug on the back. Got our wires coming out here. Let's plug it in and see how it works. Now all I'm going to do is be testing the power right now, because I know all of this will be set up in a few minutes when we do the controller. So the light is on when the power is on. So let's get a light over here. We have that set. We turn it on, turn it off, and we've got it. That works great. So this will control the controller. Then I'll have these buttons for everything else, and of course this will be for the probe. Having this little control box is a real luxury, and it's also great to have the probe, being able to plug this in and be able to switch between the two different probes that I have. I absolutely love this project. Hi everyone, thank you for watching my video today. If you like the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below and the little bell next to it so you'll be notified on the different videos that I upload. Also check out the videos over here to be able to stay up to date on the happenings in my shop. So again, thank you for watching my videos.